Costco made $7.3 billion in net income last year. But here's the part that most financial analysts quietly note, and most people completely overlook. Its entire retail operation, the food, the electronics, the clothing, the gas, generated almost no profit at all. The money did not come from selling you a television or a 40-pound bag of rice. It came from charging you permission to walk through the door. That single card, priced at $65, is the engine behind one of the most quietly dominant business models in the history of American retail. And most people who shop there every week have never stopped to understand why that card is worth far more to Costco than it is to them. And that is exactly what we are breaking down today. To understand why the Costco model matters right now, in 2026, you have to understand a fundamental shift in how the most durable businesses on Earth actually make money. For most of the 20th century, the logic of retail was simple. You buy a product for less than you sell it for. The gap between those two numbers, the margin, is your business. The bigger the margin, the more profitable the company. This is the model that built department stores, supermarkets, and eventually the early years of big box retail. But something changed. As supply chains globalized and competition intensified, margins compressed. A grocery store operating on a 2% net margin is not unusual. A clothing retailer fighting for 3% is considered healthy. In this environment, the companies that survived were not the ones selling the best products. They were the ones who found a way to monetize the relationship itself, not just the transaction. We now live in an economy where the most valuable thing a company can own is not inventory. It is not a factory or a fleet. It is a locked-in, committed customer base that pays before they buy anything. Subscription models, membership programs, loyalty ecosystems, these are not marketing tactics. They are the structural foundation of the most resilient businesses of the last 20 years. Apple charges you for iCloud storage and Apple One. Amazon charges you for Prime. Netflix charges you for access. And Costco, decades before any of these companies existed, had already figured out the exact same thing. In 2025, Costco's membership revenue crossed $4.8 billion. That number is not a side feature of the business. For most of the past decade, it has been the entire source of Costco's profitability. And yet the average Costco shopper walks out of that warehouse believing they just got a great deal. They are not wrong, but they are not seeing the full picture. Here is how the system actually works, and why it is far more sophisticated than it appears. Costco operates on a near-zero merchandise margin. The company has an internal policy, rarely discussed publicly, that no product in its warehouse will be marked up more than 14% above cost. On most items, the markup is closer to 11%. For context, a traditional supermarket marks up products by 25 to 30%. A department store might mark up clothing by 50% or more. Costco deliberately leaves that money on the table. The reason is counterintuitive. By keeping prices so close to cost, Costco creates a product that no competing retailer can match on value. You cannot find a better price on a rotisserie chicken, a case of paper towels, or a name brand television almost anywhere else in the physical retail world. That price advantage is not accidental. It is a deliberate design feature because its purpose is not to make profit. Its purpose is to make membership feel indispensable. When a customer walks into Costco and saves $40 on items they were already going to buy, they do not think, "I just contributed to a membership renewal." They think this card pays for itself every single visit. That psychological experience is the product Costco is actually selling, not the chicken, not the television. The feeling of being on the inside of something most people do not have access to. And now here is the layer that most people never see. Costco's membership renewal rate in the United States and Canada consistently sits above 92%. In some years, it has reached 93%. That is an almost unheard of retention figure for any paid consumer service. It means that once someone joins, they almost never leave. And because the membership fee scales with inflation, Costco has raised it multiple times over its history, most recently in 2024, that revenue base grows without Costco having to acquire a single new customer. When you build a model where the revenue is locked in before the doors open, where customers renew automatically, and where the product itself trains people to rely on it monthly, you have built something that functions less like a retailer and more like a financial instrument, predictable, compounding, nearly recession-proof. There is a concept in behavioral economics called the sunk cost advantage. It sounds like a paradox, but Costco has been exploiting it for 40 years. When a customer pays $65 for a membership, something happens in their psychology that does not happen when they walk into a free store. They feel the need to justify the expenditure. They drive a little further. They buy a little more. They come back more consistently because each visit feels like it is recouping the cost of the card. This is not manipulation. It is a well-documented feature of human behavior. We assign more value to things we have paid to access. We protect investments we have already made. Costco did not create this behavior, but it built an entire retail empire on top of it. Now contrast this with how most people think about business. The average person, when evaluating a company, looks at the product. Is it good? Is it priced fairly? Will people buy it? These are not wrong questions, but they are surface-level questions. The person who builds wealth, whether as an investor, an entrepreneur, or a career professional, thinks one level deeper. They ask, where does the money actually come from? What makes the customer come back? What part of the system is irreplaceable? The answer in Costco's case is not the rotisserie chicken. It is not the Kirkland-branded olive oil or the bulk pack batteries. It is the architecture of the relationship. A customer who has paid to be here, who saves money every time they shop, who has structured their household purchasing habits around a single warehouse. That customer is not a transaction. They are an annuity. The people who build and invest in these kinds of systems understand something that most workers and consumers never articulate clearly. Recurring, locked-in revenue is worth exponentially more than one-time revenue. A business that earns $10,000 once is not the same as a business that earns $800 a month automatically from the same customer. The math is obvious when you write it down, but the psychology of actually building toward recurring relationships in a career, a business, a personal brand requires a complete reorientation of how most people think about creating value. Let us walk through exactly how Costco built this system, not as an accident of good pricing, but as a deliberate, decades-long strategic architecture. In 1983, Jim Sinegal and Jeffrey Brotman opened the first Costco warehouse in Seattle, Washington. The concept was not new. Saul Price had pioneered the membership warehouse model a decade earlier with Price Club. But what Sinegal understood and what he embedded into Costco's DNA from the beginning was that the membership fee was not a revenue stream. It was a filter. By charging for entry, Costco ensured that its customer base was made up of people who were serious about shopping there. Not casual browsers, not once-a-year visitors, committed households who had made a deliberate financial decision to consolidate their purchasing through a single channel. That commitment changes the entire economics of the business. Lower marketing costs, higher average basket sizes, more predictable inventory requirements. Sinegal also made a decision that most retail executives would have found professionally terrifying. He capped his own margins by policy and made it public. Costco's 14% markup ceiling was not a secret internal guideline. It was a promise to customers and a constraint that the business built its culture around. Buyers at Costco are not incentivized to maximize margin. They are incentivized to find the best possible product at the lowest possible price. The better deal they find, the stronger the membership value proposition becomes. This is where the complication enters, and where most outside observers assumed Costco would eventually fail. Throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s, Wall Street analysts repeatedly flagged Costco's low margins as a structural problem. The argument was straightforward. A company that deliberately avoids capturing available profit is leaving money on the table. Competitors like Sam's Club and BJ's Wholesale operated similarly, but without the same disciplined margin restraint. The conventional view was that Costco's model was admirable but fragile, that any economic shock would expose the weakness of running on near-zero merchandise margins. What those analysts missed was the compounding effect of membership loyalty. During the 2008 financial crisis, when consumer spending collapsed and major retailers closed hundreds of stores, Costco's membership renewal rate barely moved. People canceled cable, they canceled gym memberships, they cut restaurant spending dramatically, but they kept the Costco card because the Costco card was the thing that helped them navigate the financial pressure. In a recession, value becomes more important, not less. And Costco had spent 25 years training its customers to associate the membership with savings. The business had been stress-tested by the market and passed. And from that moment forward, the model's durability was no longer theoretical, it was proven. So what does a wholesale warehouse in Seattle have to do with your financial life in 2026? More than most people realize. The core principle of the Costco model is not about bulk buying or low margins. It is about designing a system where value flows to you before you have to work for it, where the relationship itself creates economic stability. That principle applies whether you are building a business, a career, or a personal income strategy. Consider the professional who bills by the hour. Every month begins at zero. Every month requires the same effort to refill the pipeline. There is no carry, no compounding, no relationship equity. Now consider the consultant who converts 3 of those clients into monthly retainers. The revenue does not reset. The relationship is the asset. Or consider the creator who posts content for free and waits for advertising revenue, versus the creator who builds a paid membership community around a niche topic. One is dependent on platform algorithms and advertiser budgets. The other has a base of people who have already voted with their wallets, who show up consistently, and whose lifetime value compounds every year they stay. The Costco mindset applied to an individual career looks like this. Find the thing you can deliver consistently and repeatedly that a specific group of people cannot easily get elsewhere. Then build a structure that rewards them for committing to that relationship in advance. It does not have to be $65. It could be a consulting retainer, a subscription newsletter, a monthly coaching call, an ongoing service agreement. The question to ask yourself this week is not, what can I sell? The question is, what can I offer that is worth a recurring commitment? And who is the specific group of people whose life is measurably better because they have access to it? That shift in framing, from transaction to relationship, from product to access, from one-time to recurring, is the single most valuable reorientation a working professional can make in how they think about building income. There is a concept that sits beneath the Costco model and beneath most of the great wealth-building structures of the last century. It is called captive distribution. Distribution is the mechanism by which a product or service reaches its customer. Most businesses have to fight for distribution every single day. They pay for advertising, they negotiate with retailers, they compete for shelf space, search rankings, social media reach. Distribution is expensive, uncertain, and constantly contested. Costco does not have a distribution problem. When Costco decides to stock a new product, that product immediately reaches 35 million households, all of whom have already paid to be in the system, all of whom visit the warehouse an average of 12 times per year, and all of whom have been trained to trust the Kirkland label. A brand that gets into Costco does not need a marketing budget. The distribution channel does the work. This is why consumer goods companies, from food manufacturers to apparel brands, compete intensely for shelf space in that warehouse. And it is why Costco has been able to use its distribution leverage to extract better prices from suppliers, which it then passes on to members, which strengthens the membership value proposition, which increases renewal rates, which gives Costco more negotiating power with suppliers. This is a flywheel, and flywheels, once moving, are extraordinarily difficult to stop. Now here is the moment that should genuinely challenge something you believe about wealth and scale. Most people think of wealth as the result of selling a lot of things. The bigger the volume, the bigger the fortune. And on the surface, Costco supports that story. It is one of the largest retailers in the world by revenue. But the actual wealth is not in the revenue, it is in the structural position. Costco's value comes from what it controls. The relationship with 35 million households, the renewal income that funds everything else, and the captive distribution channel that every supplier needs access to. The lesson here is not about scale, it is about position. You do not need to be large to be powerful. You need to be in the right position in the right system. The person who owns the meeting room everyone else has to rent. The professional who sits at the center of a network that cannot function without them. The platform that sits between buyers and sellers. Position is the asset. Everything else, the revenue, the margin, the growth, follows from where you sit in the system. Understanding this reframes how you evaluate opportunity. The question is never simply, is this a good product? The question is, does this position me at a point where I control something other people need access to? Costco did not build a billion-dollar empire by having the cheapest prices. Any retailer can cut prices, and most of them are eventually destroyed by the attempt. Costco built its empire by engineering a relationship so valuable that people pay to maintain it, return to it consistently, and defend it when challenged. The membership card is not a convenience, it is a commitment device. And commitment, in business and in personal finance, is the closest thing there is to a guaranteed return. The companies, the careers, and the income streams that survive economic cycles, technological disruption, and competitive pressure are not the ones with the best product in any given moment. They are the ones with the most durable relationships, built on genuine value, delivered consistently, structured for renewal. That is the model. That is the machine. And once you see it, you will start recognizing it everywhere. In the businesses you admire, in the deals you notice, and eventually in the structures you build yourself. Subscribe to Business and Money Secrets, and come back tomorrow. What we're covering next will make today's episode look like the introduction.